We've got an uncontrollable urge to talk about the Devo documentary, which just came out on Netflix today. This is one of our favorite things to do. There have been so many great music docs lately. You could always turn to us when there is one of these. And this is very much in our wheelhouse as Gen X kids. I was excited to watch this. It is out there for your enjoyment now. So come subscribe if this kind of thing interests you as well. Alonso, what happens in the Devo documentary?
It's the review you want.
Jerry said, could we have that money to make a video instead? And they looked at us and they went, what would we do with that?
This is a look at the history of the band, going all the way back to, I did not realize this, Jerry Casale and Mark Mothersbaugh being at Kent State in the early 1970s. And so, yes, they were there when that happened at Kent State. And that was part of the sort of political crucible in which Devo was created. And they were very much always meant to be a political band and always meant to be kind of an art band. And they just sort of worked their way up in a way that like people started noticing who they were and celebrities started coming to their show and a label signed them and they had a hit with Whip It, and you know, it just kind of went from there. So it is a very unlikely band, but at the same time an essential band, and frankly one who's been right about everything for 50 years. Everything they have to say about American culture and politics and our attention spans and everything else, they nailed it back in the 70s and we're still catching up to it. So yeah, it is, you know, they talk to all of the surviving members. We get a look at, they were very early to embrace video as an art form, well before MTV existed. So there's tons of footage of them performing these little, you know, at little Akron, you know, dive bars. And then later, you know, being part of the whole kind of punk new wave movement and playing at Max's Kansas City. I always remember my dear friend Regina G, who, when we were both doing college radio in the 80s, had like spiky orange hair. She is now a professor of classics. But she said that we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and one day she said an old man came up to her at a 7-Eleven and said, "Are you one of them Devo punk rockers?" So the phrase Devo punk rocker lives forever in my brain. Yeah, and so it's just about them dealing with, you know, the usual bullshit that all bands have to deal with, the grind of recording and touring and recording videos, the, you know, chicanery of major labels, all of that other stuff, and how eventually, like, they just weren't making enough hits for Warner Brothers liking, and so things kind of fall apart from there. But, you know, Mark Mothersbaugh goes on to become one of our leading film scorers and whatnot, and they still have that really funky green building that looks like it's from Mr. Rogers' Land of Make-Believe, right on Sunset Boulevard, where their offices still exist. So yeah, this is a really insightful look at a band. You know, it's not super warts and all. There's no drinking problems or, like, you know, bad marriages. It's really about the work and about how important the work is and how this music was often misunderstood. They were kind of dismissed as sort of a novelty act, but that it's always really been about something. And the things that it's about are things that are still super relevant to us today.
Yeah, I was sort of stunned by that when you see, you know, that what happened at Kent State with the National Guard coming in when there are all these Vietnam protests and, like, you know, 4 kids get shot or 4 kids get killed, many others get shot. Like, how totally of the moment relevant that is when you see, like, National Guard patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C. because the president just kind of wants to exert control and make us all fearful. So I'm like, wow, they were right over 50 years ago. And everything they said about how people wanted to cling to a notion of America from the
that never
50s
existed.
and 60s that never really existed, you know, and showing what happens when Reagan comes into office and how all those ideals are back again. Like, yeah, they really
another
were.
reminder that "Make America Great Again" was a Reagan slogan first.
It was Reagan, yeah. So that was fascinating, and they're all really great storytellers, and they all have such a it's sort of an absurdist sense of humor. And I loved seeing all the different influences that they pulled from to create a look and a sound that is totally singular. And yet you can see, like, oh yes, here's the Dadaist influence and here's the David Bowie influence. And so that was all kind of fascinating. Chris Smith directed this, who did one of the 2 Fyre Festival documentaries. He did Fyre also on Netflix, which
An
I
American
think is the
movie.
better. into American movie. I think that's the better of the two Fyre Festival documentaries that came out in 2019. But it's structured in a very traditional way. It is not reinventing the wheel here, but it moves so beautifully and it's edited so well because, as you say, there is such a wealth of footage here that they were shooting so much with a video in mind, but also just the different kinds of archival footage that Chris Smith pulls in here with his editor to illustrate the era, various eras in America, and all the different movies, like from Metropolis to Inherit the Wind, like all the different movies that influenced their ideology and all the different bands. Yeah, all the David Bowie stuff is really fascinating. You can see why Iggy Pop would be drawn to them. You could see why I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Neil Young. He worked with Neil Young quite a bit. You can see why all that makes sense.
And artist Bruce Conner, like making the Mongoloid video for them, and like that is a total meshing of aesthetics that work together,
Yeah. And then you can see also how like Mark Mothersbaugh becomes, as you say, this like one of the preeminent American composers of our time. But like that first thing that he scored was Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yes.
Which makes absolute sense as like his gateway into,
yes.
into then Wes Anderson,
Right.
It makes total sense and everything in between. So, and then Cocaine Bear, he's so versatile. I mean, there's no one specific Mark Mothersbaugh sound, I don't think. We were just talking about Hans Zimmer a little bit ago, but I think he's so versatile, Mark Mothersbaugh. Have you ever seen Devo live?
They were my first concert.
Amazing.
November 1982, the Oh No tour at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. It was pretty great. Cool. So I got to see it was the tour where they were interacting with the video screen behind them.
They still do that. Okay, so I have also seen them. Chris and I took Nick to see them. Gosh, I guess it was 3 years ago at the YouTube Theater next to SoFi Stadium. It's like a 6,000 seat theater. And they come out in the yellow jumpsuits and the hats, and they do all the things, all the robotic movements that you want to see them do. And they still have the video screen behind them.
Nice.
And that's yet another example of how they were so ahead of their time, because that's such a standard thing to do now, to interact with images behind you, and rock critics dismissed it back then like, oh, this is a distraction, just play the hits.
Yeah, no, they used the phrase in the documentary, and they also titled one of their compilation records as the pioneers who got scalped, and so I think they are kind of Cassandras in a lot of ways, both in terms of being a little too early on something that would then later be embraced by everybody, like music video in particular, but then also just the political messaging. I mean, I think about freedom of choice about once a week. Something comes up where I'm like, freedom from choice is what you want, and all the stuff that they were saying in the 70s and 80s totally reverberates into the shithole that American democracy has become. And so, they were telling people stuff that they didn't want to hear or weren't ready to hear. But I think maybe now we're ready. I don't know. I hope the documentary helps.
I hope. I love the parade of like talk show hosts trying to get a normal interview out of them. Only David Letterman gets it.
Yes.
That makes perfect sense.
But Merv Griffin wearing the plastic hair, that's for me worth the price of admission.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember them quite a bit from early MTV. That Whibbit video was on really heavy rotation early MTV. So I feel very thankful that I've seen them live. They also played at Cruel World this past summer. I watched Garbage. Chris went across the way to the other stage for Devo, but I'm thankful to have seen them. And they still sound amazing. So if Devo is playing near you, I don't know if this movie is like spurring another Devo tour, but like jump on that, because they're in their 70s and they still sound amazing. So
excellent. What's your score?
Like a 9. Like I had a really good time. Like I learned a lot. It moves really well. It's only an hour and a half long, but they cram in a whole lot. You will get all those songs stuck in your head, and that's a good thing. And that's a good thing.
And that's good. Yes, that's good.
That's good.
I'm like an 8.9. I think it's really terrific. I think it's of a piece with the Go-Go's documentary that we got a couple of years ago, in terms of like it's economical, but it tells you all these things and stuff that maybe you didn't know, and just like how much came out of the late 70s, early 80s that then became a thing that was more palatable to a mass audience, but still contained like the ideas and the reference points, So I find both of those those musical journeys comparable and really fascinating. So yeah, it's on Netflix. Devo, check it out. It is good.